Hello, welcome to today's Memory Lane Stories for Seniors. As it is still Poetry Month, we are going to be starting with some poetry before we move into continuing our short stories and poems from Thomas Hardy that Maddie was reading last week. So if this is your first time joining us, this is only our second video, so don't worry about that. This is a new program that we've started. We are going to be doing some readings Wednesday afternoons from 2 o'clock to about 2:45, depending on what we're reading. And these are just some classic stories, some classic poems that you can kind of look back on, reflect on. Maybe you remember them when you were a kid, and just kind of enjoy that trip down memory lane. If these are poems or books or stories that you haven't read before, I hope you enjoy them. Feel free to say hi in the video. Feel free to comment and let us know your thoughts. And we'll kind of have a look at that as we go. So to start today, we're going to be reading some poems by Langston Hughes. The book is The Sweet and Sour Animal Book. And then we're going to read some poems by Emily Dickinson, and then move into our selected short stories and poems of Thomas Hardy. So, without further ado, we will get started. Okay, The Sweet and Sour Animal Book. A. There was an ape who bought a cape to wear when he went downtown. The other apes, who had no capes, said, "Look at that stuck-up clown." B. A bumblebee flew right in the house and lit on a bouquet of flowers. It turned out the flowers were paper mache, so that bee looked for honey for hours. C. There was a camel who had 2 humps. He thought in his youth they were wisdom bumps. Then he learned they were nothing but humps, and ever since, he's been in the dumps. D. Rover Dog is quite brave when he's chasing Tom Cat around the bend. But when Tom Cat scratches him on the nose, Rover Dog turns tail and goes. E. Elephant, elephant, big as a house, they tell me that you are afraid of a mouse. F. There was a fish with a greedy eye who darted toward a big green fly. Alas, that fly was bait on a hook, so the fisherman took the fish home to cook. G. What use is a goose except to quackle? If a goose can't quackle, she's out of whackle. H. Dobbin used to be a fire horse pulling a truck with pride. Now the village has a motor truck, old Dobbin's cast aside. I. Ibis, in case you have not heard, is a long-legged wading bird. Happiest where fish are found, he hates to set foot on dry ground. J. Jaybird, do you know what I would do? Naw, I wouldn't try to sing at all if I were you. Caw! K. A little white kitten got caught in the rain. The mud and the wetting caused him great pain. When he got in the house and lay down to dry, he started purring, "How happy am I?" L. A lion in a zoo, shut up in a cage, lives a life of smothered rage. A lion in the plain, roaming free, as happy as ever a lion can be. M. Jocko is a peanut friend. He can eat peanuts like an eating machine. When the peanuts are gone and his fun is done, Jocko can chatter like a son of a gun. N. Newt, 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 what can you be? Just a salamander, child, that's me. O. At night the owl in a hollow tree, with one eye shut, still can see. But daylight changes all of that. By day an owl is blind as a bat. P. There was a pigeon, a mighty flyer. His friends called him Pigeon Maguire. But he perched upon an electric wire, and that was the end of Pigeon Maguire. Q. Quail are happy and fleet on their feet, till the hunter comes gunning for something to eat. Boom! R. Peter Rabbit had a habit of eating garden plants, until Mrs. Rabbit caught Peter Rabbit and warmed his little pants. S. Mrs. Squirrel can look so sweet when she finds her nest is neat. When baby squirrels mess up her bower, Mrs. Squirrel indeed looks sour. T. Turtle, turtle, I wonder why other animals pass you by. Turtles travel very slow, still I get where I want to go. U. The unicorn has a single horn, except that there is no unicorn. In fairy tales alone they're born, happy, unreal unicorn. V. The vixen is a female fox, pleased the woods to roam. If a trapper puts her in a box, she never feels at home. W. A pretty white mouse, smooth as silk, made a misstep and fell in the milk. When she got out, she was soaked to the skin and mad as a hatter because she fell in. X. X, of course, is a letter too, but I know no animal starts with an X. Do you? I know that there is an axolotl, but that starts with an A, not an X. Y. Yaks are shaggy and yaks are strong, happiest where the winters are long. But when summer sun is bright and bold, a yak had rather be where it's cold. Z. Zebra, zebra, which is right? White on black or black on white? No more. So with a riddle, my young friend, from A to Z, we come to the end. So that was The Sweet and Sour Animal Book by Langston Hughes. All right. Oh, sometimes my lighting on here looks interesting. Okay. Well, now we will read some poetry by Emily Dickinson. So this was written Valentine Week, 1850. So this is a little bit old. Awake, ye muses, 9, sing me a strain divine, unwind the solemn twine, and tie my valentine. Oh, the earth was made for lovers, for damsel and hopeless swain, for sighing and gentle whispering, and unity made of twain. All things do go according, in earth or sea or air. God hath made nothing single but thee in his world so fair. The bride, and then the bridegroom, the two, and then the one. Adam and Eve his consort, the moon, and then the sun. The life doth prove the precept, who obey shall happy be. Who will not serve the sovereign, be hanged on fatal tree. The high do seek the lowly, the great do seek the small. None cannot find who seeketh on this terrestrial ball. The bee doth court the flower his suit receives, and they make merry weddings whose guests are 100 leaves. The wind doth woo the branches they are one, and the father fond demandeth the maiden for his son. The storm doth walk the seashore, humming a mournful tune. The wave with eye so pensive looketh to see the moon. Their spirits meet together, they make them solemn vows. No more, he singeth mournful, her sadness she doth lose. The worm doth woo the mortal, death claims a living bride. Night unto day is married, morn unto eventide. Earth is a merry damsel, and heaven a knight so true. And earth is quite coquettish, and beseemeth in vain to sue. Now to the application, to the reading of the roll, to bringing thee to justice, and marshalling thy soul. Thou art a human solo, a being cold and lone. Wilt have no kind companion, thou reapest what thou hast sown. Hast never silent hours, and minutes all too long, and a deal of sad reflection, and wailing instead of song? There's Sarah and Eliza, and Emmeline so fair, and Harriet and Susan, and she with curling hair. Thine eyes are sadly blinded, but yet thou mayest see 6 true and comely maidens sitting upon the tree. Approach that tree with caution, then up it boldly climb, and seize the one thou lovest, nor care for space or time. Then bear her to the greenwood, and build her for a bower, and give her what she asketh, jewel or bird or flower. And bring the fife and trumpet, and beat upon the drum, and bid the world good morrow, and go to glory home. All right. Now this poem was written in 1894. There is another sky, ever serene and fair, and there is another sunshine, though it be darkness there. Never mind faded forests, Austin, never mind silent fields. Here is a little forest, whose leaf is evergreen. Here is a brighter garden, where not a frost has been. In its unfading flowers I hear the bright bee hum. Prithee, my brother, into my garden come. Okay. Now, this poem was written in 1852. On this wondrous sea, sailing silently, ho, pilot, ho, knowest thou break the shore, where no breakers roar, where the storm is o'er, in the peaceful west, may the sails at rest, the anchors fast, thither I pilot thee, land ho, eternity, ashore at last. And this poem, oh, I was wrong. That one was not. That one was written in 1852. This poem was written in 1853. And for those just joining us, these are some poems by Emily Dickinson. I have a bird in spring, which for myself doth sing. The spring decoys, and as the summer nears, and as the rose appears, robin is gone. Yet I do not repine, knowing that bird of mine, though flown, learneth beyond the sea, melody new for me, and will return. Fast in a safer hand, held in a truer land, are mine, and though they now depart, tell I my doubting heart, they're thine. In a serener bright, in a more golden light, I see each little doubt and fear, each little discord here removed. Then I will not repine, knowing that bird of mine, though flown, shall in a distant tree bright melody for me return. And this poem was written in 1854. Frequently the woods are pink, frequently are brown, frequently the hills undress behind my native town. Oft a head is crested, I was wont to see, and as oft a cranny where it used to be. And the earth, they tell me, on its axis turned, wonderful rotation by but 12 performed. And this poem was written in 1858. There is a word which bears a sword, can pierce an armed man. It hurls its barbed syllables and is mute again. But where it fell, the saved will tell, on a patriotic day, some epauletted brother gave his breath away. Wherever runs the breathless sun, wherever roams the day, there it's noisiest, it's noiseless onset, there it is victory. Behold the keenest marksman, the most accomplished shot, time's sublimest target is a soul forgot. Though thine it lay through bramble, through clearing and through wood, banditti often passed us upon the lonely road. The wolf came peering, curious, the owl looked puzzled down, the serpent's satin figure glid stealthily along. The tempest touched our garments, the lightning's poignards gleamed. Fierce from the crag above us, the hungry vulture screamed. The satyr's fingers beckoned, the valley murmured, come. These were the mates, this was the road, these children fluttered home. All right, and the last poem that we'll read from Emily Dickinson, this one was written in 1858. I never told the buried gold upon the hill that lies. I saw the sun, his plunder done, crouch low to guard his prize. He stood as near as you stood here, a pace had been between. Did but a snake bisect the brake, my life had forfeit been. That was a wondrous booty, I hope 'twas honest gained. Those were the fairest ingots that ever kissed the spade. Whether to keep the secret, whether to reveal, whether, as I ponder, kid will sudden sail. Could a shrew advise me, we might e'en divide. Should a shrewd betray me, a atropos decide. All right, so that was Emily Dickinson. So we have about 20 minutes that we'll read from Thomas Hardy's selected short stories and poems. So we will pick up from where Maddie left off. I'll do my best to see where she was. Okay. I hope you're all doing well today. Hope you're able to get out and enjoy some of the nice sun when it's not so windy. Okay. So it looks like she left off on page 34. So I will just start at the top of the page. So once again, this is Selected Short Stories and Poems by Thomas Hardy. The impression remaining from the night's experience was still strong. Brooke had almost expected to see the wrinkles, the scorn, and the cruelty on her visitor's face. She would have escaped an interview had escape been possible. There was, however, no back door to the cottage, and in an instant the boy had lifted the latch to Mrs. Lodge's gentle knock. "I see I have come to the right house," she said, glancing at the lad and smiling. "But I was not sure till you opened the door." The figure and action were those of the phantom, but her voice was so indescribably sweet, her glance so winning, her smile so tender, so unlike that of Rhoda's midnight visitant, that the latter could hardly believe the evidence of her senses. She was truly glad that she had not hidden away in sheer aversion, as she had been inclined to do. In her basket, Mrs. Lodge brought the pair of boots that she had promised to the boy, and other useful articles. At these proofs of a kindly feeling towards her and hers, Rhoda's heart reproached her bitterly. This innocent young thing should have her blessing and not her curse. When she left them, a light seemed gone from the dwelling. 2 days later, she came again to know if the boots fitted, and less than a fortnight after that paid Rhoda another call. On this occasion, the boy was absent. "I walk a good deal," said Mrs. Lodge, "and your house is the nearest outside our own parish. I hope you are well. You don't look quite well." Rhoda said she was well enough, and indeed, though the paler of the two, there was more of the strength that endures in her well-defined features and large frame than in the soft-cheeked young woman before her. The conversation became quite confidential as regarded their powers and weaknesses. And when Mrs. Lodge was leaving, Rhoda said, "I hope you will find this air agree with you, ma'am, and not suffer from the damp of the water meads." The younger one replied that there was not much doubt of it, her general health being usually good. Though now you remind me, she added, "I have one little ailment which puzzles me. It is nothing serious, but I cannot make it out." She uncovered her left hand and arm, and their outline confronted Rhoda's gaze as the exact original of the limb she had beheld and seized in her dream. Upon the pink, round surface of the arm were faint marks of an unhealthy color, as if produced by a rough grasp. Rhoda's eyes became riveted on the discolorations. She fancied that she discerned in them the shape of her own 4 fingers. "How did it happen?" she asked mechanically. "I cannot tell," replied Mrs. Lodge, shaking her head. "One night, when I was sound asleep, dreaming I was away in some strange place, a pain suddenly shot into my arm there, and was so keen as to waken me. I must have struck it in the daytime, I suppose, though I don't remember doing so," she added, laughing. "I tell my dear husband that it looks just as if he had flown into a rage and struck me there. Oh, I dare say it will soon disappear." "Ha, yes. On what night did it come?" Mrs. Lodge considered, and said it would be a fortnight ago on the morrow. "When I awoke, I could not remember where I was," she added, "till the clock striking 2 reminded me." She had named the night and the hour of Rhoda's spectral encounter, and Brooke felt like a guilty thing. The artless disclosure startled her. She did not reason on the freaks of coincidence, and all the scenery of that ghastly night returned with double vividness to her mind. "Oh, can it be," she said to herself, when her visitor had departed, "that I exercise a malignant power over people against my own will?" She knew she had been slyly called a witch since her fall, but never having understood why that particular stigma had been attached to her. It had passed, disregarded. Could this be the explanation? And had such things as this ever happened before? All right. Part 4, a suggestion. The summer drew on, and Rhoda Brooke almost dreaded to meet Mrs. Lodge again. notwithstanding that her feeling for the young wife amounted well nigh to affection. Something in her own individuality seemed to convict Rhoda of the crime. Yet a fatality sometimes would direct the steps of the latter to the outskirts of Holmstoke whenever she left her house for any other purpose than her daily work. And hence it happened that their next encounter was out of doors. Rhoda could not avoid the subject which had so mystified her, and for the first few words she stammered, "I hope your arm is well again, ma'am?" She had perceived with consternation that Gertrude Lodge carried her left arm stiffly. "No, it is not quite well. Indeed, it is no better at all. It is rather worse. It pains me dreadfully sometimes." "Perhaps you had better go to a doctor, ma'am." She replied that she had already seen a doctor. Her husband had insisted upon her going to one, but the surgeon had not seemed to understand the afflicted limb at all. He had told her to bathe it in hot water, and she had bathed it, but the treatment had done no good. "Will you let me see it?" said the milkwoman. Mrs. Lodge pushed up her sleeve and disclosed the place, which was a few inches above the wrist. As soon as Rhoda Brooke saw it, she could hardly preserve her composure. There was nothing of the nature of a wound, but the arm at that point had a shriveled look, and the outline of the 4 fingers appeared more distinct than at the former time. Moreover, she fancied that they were imprinted in precisely the relative position of her clutch upon the arm in the trance. The first finger towards Gertrude's wrist, and the 4th toward her elbow. What the impress resembled seemed to have struck Gertrude herself since their last meeting. "It looks almost like finger marks," she said, adding with a faint laugh, "My husband said it is as if some witch or the devil himself had taken hold of me there and blasted the flesh." Rhoda shivered. "That's fancy," she said hurriedly. "I wouldn't mind it if I were you." "I shouldn't so much mind it," said the younger with hesitation, if I hadn't a notion that it makes my husband dislike me, no, love me less. Men think so much of personal appearance. Some do, he for one. Yes, and he was very proud of mine at first. Keep your arm covered from his sight. Ah, he knows the disfigurement is there." She tried to hide the tears that filled her eyes. "Well, ma'am, I earnestly hope it will go away soon." And so the milkwoman's mind was chained anew to the subject by a horrid sort of spell as she returned home. The sense of having been guilty of an act of malignity increased. Affect as she might to ridicule her superstition, in her secret heart Rhoda did not altogether object to a slight diminution of her successor's beauty by whatever means it had come about, but she did not wish to inflict upon her physical pain. For though this pretty young woman had rendered impossible any reparation which Laud might have made Rhoda for his past conduct, everything like resentment at the unconscious usurpation had quite passed from the elder's mind. If the sweet and kindly Gertrude Lodge only knew of the dream scene in the bedchamber, what would she think? Not to inform her of it seemed treachery in the presence of her friendliness, but tell she could not of her own accord, neither could she devise a remedy. She mused upon the matter the greater part of the night, and the next day, after the morning milking, set out to obtain another glimpse of Gertrude Lodge, if she could, being held to her by a gruesome fascination. By watching the house from a distance, the milkmaid was presently able to discern the farmer's wife in a ride she was taking along, probably to join her husband in some distant field. Mrs. Lodge perceived her and cantered in her direction. "Good morning, Rhoda," Gertrude said when she had come up. "I was going to call." Rhoda noticed that Mrs. Lodge held the reins with some difficulty. I hope. The bad arm? Said Rhoda. They tell me there is possibly one way by which I might be able to find out the cause, and so perhaps the cure of it, replied the other anxiously. It is by going to some clever man over in Egdon Heath. They did not know if he was still alive, and I cannot remember his name at this moment. But they said that you knew more of his movements than anybody else hereabout, and could tell me if he were still to be consulted. Dear me, what was his name? But you know. Not Conjurer Trendle, said her thin companion, turning pale. Trendle, yes. Is he alive? I believe so, said Rhoda with reluctance. Why do you call him a conjurer? Well, they used to say he had powers other folks have not. Oh, how could my people be so superstitious as to recommend a man of that sort? I thought they meant some medical man. I shall think no more of him. Rhoda looked relieved, and Mrs. Lodge rode on. The milkwoman had inwardly seen, from the moment she heard of her husband having been mentioned as a reference for this man, that there must exist a sarcastic feeling among the workforce, that a sorceress would know the whereabouts of the exorcist. They suspected her then. A short time ago this would have given no concern to a woman of her common sense, but she had a haunting reason to be superstitious now. And she had been seized with a sudden dread that this conjurer Trendle might name her as the malignant influence which was blasting the fair person of Gertrude, and so lead her friend to hate her forever, and to treat her as some fiend in human shape. But all was not over. 2 days after, a shadow intruded into the window pattern thrown on Rhoda Brooke's floor by the afternoon sun. The woman opened the door at once, almost breathlessly. "Are you alone?" said Gertrude. She seemed to be no less harassed and anxious than Brooke herself. "Yes," said Rhoda. "The place on my arm seems worse and troubles me," the young farmer's wife went on. "It is so mysterious. I do hope it will not be an incurable wound. I have again been thinking of what they said about Conjurer Trendle. I don't really believe in such men, but I should not mind just visiting him for curiosity, though on no account must my husband know. Is it far to where he lives?" "Yes, 5 miles, said Rhoda backwardly, "in the heart of Egdon." "Well, I should have to walk. Could you not go with me to show the way, say tomorrow afternoon?" "Oh, not I. That is," the milkwoman murmured with a start of dismay. Again the dread seized her that something to do with her fierce act in the dream might be revealed, and her character in the eyes of the most useful friend she had ever had be ruined irretrievably. Mrs. Lodge urged, and Rhoda finally assented, though with much misgiving. Sad as the journey would be to her, she could not conscientiously stand in the way of a possible remedy for her patron's strange affliction. It was agreed that, to escape suspicion of their mystic intent, they should meet at the edge of the heath, at the corner of a plantation which was visible from the spot where they now stood. Okay, well, we'll end there for today, and we'll pick up again next week, and we'll finish this short story by Thomas Hardy. And the name of the short story that we're reading is called The Withered Arm. Well, I hope you're having a lovely afternoon. Thank you for joining us for story time today. We will see you again next Wednesday for our next batch of stories and some poetry as well. Stay tuned all throughout the month for Poetry Month. We'll be doing some impromptu live videos with some different poetry, so you can check those out. Have a great day. I hope you guys have a great week and a great weekend, and we are looking forward to a fantastic spring with you guys as well. We'll see you next time. Bye.